Become a sponsor for the Lost Art Project Veterans Voices. Looking for veteran-owned businesses to sponsor the podcast for 1 week? Each episode, social media video will be sponsored by your business only. What do you get? 5 sponsored episodes with your logo featured, 5 social media videos with your logo featured, and 1 daily post advertising your business on all social media platforms. Support a veteran podcast and advertise your veteran-owned business. Email AJ for details. Lost Art Project Veterans Voices at gmail.com. The Lost Art Project Veteran Voices with Andrew Cox. Preserving history, one veteran story at a time. Marine Corps League and Till Valhalla Project Ambassador. Thanks for tuning in to the podcast that's given a voice to our veterans. The Lost Art Project, Veteran Voices with Andrew Cox. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Lost Art Project, Veterans Voices. Today we have a special podcast. Man, I'm really looking forward to it. I think you're really going to get something out of this. So, but before we get into the episode, are you enjoying the podcast? Make sure you go to the website. That's thelostart.podbean.com. Go check us out. See what we're all about. There's a couple of ways you can help support us. You can go to that website, click on that merchandise tab, go in there, look at the new website for the store. Go get you some cool new merchandise. You can also, if you're a veteran-owned business out there, you want to sponsor the podcast for a week, you can shoot me an email. We can work something out with that. A big shout out to the Till Valhalla Project out there doing amazing things. If you don't know anything about them, you need to go check them out. Even if you do know something about them, go back, check them out again. I promise you, you won't regret it. Go check them out at tillvalhallaproject.com. Are you a Marine veteran? Are you missing that bond you had on active duty? Then I have a place for you. Join the only congressionally chartered Marine Corps Veteran Service Organization, the Marine Corps League. Get that brother and sisterhood back in your life. Become one of the fewer, the prouder, a Marine Corps League member. All right, we are back. Like I said, this is going to be a special podcast. I'm very excited about it. Normally, we do veteran stories for here in the U.S. military, but we're making an exception. Why? Because Heidi here, she's telling her father's story. It's a very unique story. And, you know, I'm just excited for everybody to hear this because I was looking at the website. I was reading up on some of the stuff. Very interesting stuff, Heidi. But Heidi, how you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me today. Really excited.
Absolutely, man. I'm excited that you're here. So now you've written a book, right? And it's Save the Last Bullet, if I'm not mistaken. And that is about your father. So why don't we kind of just jump into it and kind of start at the beginning? You know, obviously you were growing up hearing stories, right? Going along. So let's just jump into it and you start telling us about it.
Yeah, so my father's story is, as you said, not an American soldier's story, but a German soldier's story and a boy soldier as that. So my father was taken from his parents by the Nazis in 1943 to basically what amounted to a youth indoctrination camp to learn to become a soldier for the Führer, and that is what happened. So at age 14, he was put at what was the Eastern Front then, which was at the gates of Vienna already, because the Russians had advanced already into Austria to defend what was left of Germany, with no expectation that these kids would survive. So he and his schoolmates were thrown at that war effort, but he did survive to tell his story. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here, of course.
Right. Yeah.
and then dedicated the rest of his life to furthering democracy in Europe. At the when he truly understood what had happened.
Right.
So that's his story. He didn't talk about it when I was growing up at all.
Okay.
As many military
Sure. Yeah,
veterans do.
absolutely.
And it took me a long time to convince him. I pestered him for years as I grew older, and I started
Right.
realizing that things had happened to him that maybe were worth telling.
Mhm.
And then after he retired, long after he retired, he finally relented, and I bugged him so much that he sent me 16 cassette tapes in
Oh,
German.
wow. No kidding.
Telling his story, and that eventually gave rise to the book.
Right.
Which
Wow.
in the beginning was only going to be, I was going to just translate it for my kids
Mhm.
who don't speak German, so that they could, take part in their grandfather's story and understand history.
Mhm.
And then it turned into a book.
Right.
Almost.
Yeah. As it should have been, in my opinion. Those are lessons learned. Those are things that you don't want to get lost with time, and that's kind of what I do here on the podcast, is try to save some of these stories. Make sure that they're there for generations to come. So I'm glad that you wrote a book. You wrote all it down, and he was relented eventually to give you the tapes. So that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. And that's exactly right. I feel that his and many other stories will irrevocably be lost
Right.
because we're losing the last of the veterans. And my effort is to preserve these pieces of history in the best way possible. And I'm actually working on a second book, which
Oh,
I've
wow.
just finished. It's an anthology of survivors of World War II.
Oh,
Who
wow.
were very young when World War II ended, and they're all true accounts
Mhm.
of people who came to me after I wrote the book and wanted to share
Oh,
this
no
story.
kidding.
Yeah, and
Now,
that is
you're talking, is it Germans and Americans, or everybody? Who was it?
everybody.
Really?
I've got Dutch, British, German, Czech,
No
American.
kidding. That'll be, now, when does that one come out?
Well, I'm looking for a publisher now, so hopefully soon.
All right. All right. That's awesome. I can't wait to see it. Well, if you don't mind, can we kind of start your dad's story, kind of tell a little bit about the events? You don't have to tell every single bit of it, because we want people to read the book, but kind of walk through kind of what he went through.
Yeah, so my father was born in 1930,
Mhm.
and in a region in Germany that is on the western side, close to the border with the Netherlands and Belgium, North Rhine-Westphalia.
Okay.
And a close city there is Cologne. If people
Yeah.
know more or less where Germany, the German map. And so at that time, Hitler was already active. He had been, so the activity had started around 1920. Hitler had started getting into politics and joined what was called the German Workers' Party at the time, and then was renamed NSDAP, which is the German National Socialist Party as we know it today, right?
Okay.
And he, in 1933, so when my father was 3 years old, came to power.
Oh, okay.
His party had gained an immense amount of popularity due to, the Great Depression and the aftermath of World War I, having mired Germany in poverty and joblessness. And
Right.
so people were angry. They were poor, and he was appealing to them to make them a great nation again. And so that was very popular, obviously. So in 1933, his party had become so strong that the president of Germany at the time, Hindenburg, elected him chancellor of Germany. And in February of 1933, so he'd been elected in January. In February of 1933, the parliament burned down, the Reichstag burned down, and allegedly by the communists in an attempt to overthrow the government. Hitler seized that opportunity to convince Hindenburg to basically declare emergency powers,
Right.
Which pretty much invalidated the Constitution and eliminated all civil liberties. The freedom of speech, of protest, of congregation, and they were able to penalize
Right.
Other political parties, etc.
And
So
that put all the power in Hitler's hand at that point, correct?
Pretty much. And then he obtained the majority then in the parliament shortly thereafter, and he succeeded by imprisoning the entire Communist Party just about, so they couldn't vote, and violently intimidating the Social Democratic Party.
Right.
Then got the majority, and then enacted laws that would basically make other political parties illegal, and the creation of new political parties illegal. So in essence, by the end of that year, Germany was a one-party state. Every dissident had been either jailed or exiled, and then Hindenburg died. So then he made himself president and chancellor all in one, and there we have it, right? So this all happens between 33 and 34. Okay. My father's, not in school yet.
And 3 and 4 year old at that point, right?
Yeah, so he was a little kid. And then in 35, something interesting happened in 35. The most important thing that happened was the Nuremberg laws, which were the anti-Semitic laws that established that only Germans of German or Aryan blood could be German citizens. So the other anybody who was non-Aryan, and it was defined what that was, no longer was a citizen of Germany. They became state subjects with reduced and very limited privileges, right? And rights. Wow. And so that's how this whole thing started. And in that atmosphere, what happened is school books started changing their narratives. So it was pretty subtle in the beginning. So typically in those days, right, with any school book, you would have references to God, parents, family, church, and encouraging children to respect that, right? The narrative changed to removing those words and inserting words like fatherland, blood and soil, the Fuhrer being the source of all truth and the ultimate benefactor of children and their parents, whom the children should then pay homage to. So this gets all infiltrated by the time my father starts school in 1936 as a 6-year-old. These school books, that's how they read, right? And I was just looking at the book just before starting, and remembered that there's actually a picture in the book of one of those school books, and you can see the verse in German that asks the children to make sacrifices for Germany because they are the warranters of the new generation, and to be hard as steel. And you've probably heard that, right?
I have heard that, yeah.
Krupp Steel, like the Krupp Steel Company is actually, and they're still around. So, and they were in the region they were right where my father was born. So this whole thing is just all over, and around him. And then in 38, obviously that is infamous. 1938 is infamous for Kristallnacht, right? The night of shattered glass, which some of your listeners might be familiar with, where thousands of Jewish businesses and hundreds of synagogues were burnt down or vandalized, allegedly in a spontaneous act of rage of German citizenship uprising, because of the assassination of a German politician, a diplomat in France, by a 17-year-old Jewish dissident.
Oh, wow.
Who allegedly was angry because his parents had been deported from Germany to Poland. So in revenge, right? He he did that, and then and my father didn't realize it because he was only 8. But he then, decades later, put 2 and 2 together and realized that what he had witnessed was the aftermath of Kristallnacht the next morning. So at dawn, the next morning, it was November, so dawn was late, right? His father took him to school, but made a detour, which my father thought was strange. And he took him to his work first. And my grandfather was actually a federal employee. He was a supervisor at the German Reichsbahn, which was the German railways.
Okay.
So he took him to the train station first, and sort of there was a delay. So, and my father was worried about being late for school.
Right.
And then eventually he takes him to school. And as they get to the school, right next to close to the school was a synagogue. Well, they get into this chaotic scene with firefighters dousing the remainder of what was left of the synagogue that had been set on fire. So my father he was disturbed by that, and he asked what was going on, and he never got an answer, of course.
Right.
And so he could sense at a young age that something wasn't quite right, but he didn't know what. Right? And then fast forward 1939, right? Within a year, Germany invades Poland. It's September 1st, and by September 3rd, World War II starts because England and France declare war, right, against Germany. And at that point, of course, Germany is in cahoots with Russia, with the Soviet Union, and also Slovakia in the invasion of Poland. And then Germany becomes pretty much unstoppable for a while. What's important to note is one thing, because it influences my father greatly and it affects him greatly in 1939. So you've probably heard of the Hitler Youth, Hitlerjugend,
right?
As your listeners may have heard of that. And what's interesting to note is that organization sprang from, what you would essentially have called the Boy Scouts, right? There were numerous youth outdoor activity organizations for young boys that existed since the 1800s, and they were really popular in Germany. In Germany, the Germans were always very fond of the outdoors and of the mental and physical development of young people, so they had tons of those. And so Hitler took advantage of that to create his own organization, which of course was peppered with ideology.
Right. Yeah.
And it started actually in 22, but it became more and more popular, of course, as the years went by. And this organization, very much like the Boy Scouts, had the Jungvolk organization, which was a precursor to it, which is just like the Cub Scouts. Right?
Oh, I see.
So you had the 10 to 14-year-olds would go to the equivalent of Cub Scouts, so Jungvolk. And then from 14 to 18, they went to the Hitler Youth, Hitlerjugend. And then during wartime, those kids at 18 were shipped off directly into the military, right? So that was the assembly line, right? So that was how they churned them out. And
that's the great way of explaining that, by the way. Thank you for putting Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, that really does paint a different picture in my mind. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah. Well, and here's the I guess the one very important point. These, of course, were voluntary organizations.
Right.
Until they weren't. So in 1939, the association with these organizations was mandatory. My father was promptly enrolled on his birthday, on or around his birthday in 1940, when he turned 10, into the Jungvolk organization.
Okay.
Which he then recalls fondly. He said it was fun. It was outdoor stuff, but the stuff they were doing was like, sharpshooting, grenade launching, military marches. So,
and that's all stuff that young boys they go out and play that anyways.
And they're none the wiser, and they think it's fun. Right. So that's what he was doing. And they were, of course, very strategically timed to occur, these activities, in the weekday afternoons and on Sundays. And this was no, coincidence. This was done purposely to diminish the influence of parents and church.
Right. Yeah.
By substituting, with these activities.
Yeah. I mean, it's a smart plan, right? Hitler wasn't a dummy. He knew what he was doing.
It was not. Yeah. So yes, indeed, it was quite successful. And so then, of course, the war took its course. As most folks who know a little bit about World War II know that the tide turned right around 41, things weren't going, as well for the Germans as they had hoped. And then by 43, things were really not going so well. And so in 43, so my father's now 13. Well, there's another important organization that is worth noting. And that is, you may have heard of it. It's called the Kinderlandverschickung, which is loosely translated as the Children's Country Relocation Program. So this was, that one. Oh yeah. So this was purportedly voluntary as well, a program to send the city children to rural areas away from the war effort to protect them from Allied bombing.
Okay, right.
Well, the added benefit was, of course, they would be completely separated from their parents and now fully immersed in youth camps to be fully indoctrinated and receive military training.
Wow.
To be thrown at the war effort.
Right.
And so my dad ended up at a train station with a little placard and a little suitcase at age 13 with the rest of his class. And you'd ask, well, what if it was voluntary? Why did that happen? Well, so when parents failed to muster sufficient enthusiasm for the program because they didn't want to lose sight of their kids and not know where those kids were for God knows how long in uncertain times, then, the government devised some ways to encourage the parents to do that.
Right.
And so in Germany, as in many places, it is illegal not to send your kids to school. And it's punishable with imprisonment. And so the Germans in the region where my father lived the government decided that they would close the schools.
Oh, wow.
And so the only way to not go to jail was to send your child to the Children's Relocation Program. That was the encouragement. So
yeah,
there you go. And then they sent them in. At that point, they sent them entire classes. So like the entire, sixth grade or the entire seventh, the entire grade would go with their teachers, whether they liked it or not. Like they were, this was not voluntary anymore at this point for the teachers, definitely not. And each classroom had a Nazi handler. So a member of the Nazi party specifically assigned to monitor the goings on.
To make sure it was going their way, what they wanted.
They left nothing to chance. And they sent daily reports.
Oh, wow.
Germans are very organized. So they recorded absolutely everything. And they had daily reports going to the central administration of every single solitary grade of boys that had been relocated to ensure that things went exactly as planned.
Yeah. That's amazing. I don't know. It's speechless sometimes when you think about it,
Yeah. Very, very well controlled. And there's a picture actually of my dad sitting at a mess hall, at all of 13 and a half. Yeah. With a Nazi handler behind him.
Yeah.
And so you if you pick up the book, you can see it. So he was actually relatively lucky in the beginning because he was placed with a host family on the border with Switzerland. There is a lake called Lake Constance, which is quite well known. It's very beautiful. And it was a relatively peaceful area, and he was with the host family. So he wasn't in a youth camp. Some kids ended up in a youth camp.
Right.
Which was arguably less pleasant. So he was with a family whom he then kept in touch for a long time. For the families, the host families, it was also not voluntary and not compensated in any way. So you took the job, and that was that. And so he was there for from mid-43 to the end of 44. In the meantime, so in September of 1944, they received a visit from the SS in school. And the SS pointed him, my father, and 2 other boys out and said, "You have been chosen for the greatest honor of your lives. You will get to lay down your life for the Führer. You have been chosen to participate in the war effort." And so now you get to
Wow.
military training for 2 months, and then you go back to school until we call you.
So,
And
and he's at 14 years old at this point. Is that what
he's
you're saying?
just turned 14, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was September, I think, 44. Yeah.
Holy
And,
cow.
not that there was an option, right?
Mhm.
Of course, he did go to the military training, and they taught him how to handle, weapons, the
Mhm.
pistol and a machine
Machine gun and
and the it's called Panzerfaust, which will show up again in the story. It's similar to a bazooka,
oh,
but
okay, yeah,
it's a weapon that can only be fired once, and it was
right.
very, very effective. It was an anti-tank missile
Mhm.
launcher. It was very, very effective at close range,
Right.
in particular against the Russian tanks, which is what he was in the end
Mhm.
using them for. And so then they were put back in school.
Mhm.
And in December of 44, things really, really started turning
Right.
for the worse. And so at this point, there was no food. There were no supplies. The war had moved south. And so they tried to move the children to a remote mountainous area called
Mhm.
Schleswig, in the Austrian mountains. And there they were basically hiding for as long as it would take to then deploy them.
Okay.
And so at that point, they were starving. They were, and there was also no heating. There was the conditions were really, dismal.
Right.
And so they resorted. The kids were so hungry, they resorted to swiping food wherever they could find it. So at
Mhm.
night, they'd go out and try to they'd break in to, like, they broke into a butcher's shop, and
Wow.
the seller had sausages and cheese
Yeah.
and other things, and so they would go in, and the butcher could never figure out how they got in, and so
Mhm.
they got into some door that was that the lock wasn't working, and so
Yeah.
they successfully raided that place a few times, and had some food. And so under these conditions, the SS shows up again. So they now
Mhm.
show up. It's February 45. So it's almost the end of the war. They set up camp there, and they have food. So they have crates full of food. They have a little depot.
Mhm.
They put everything in there. And one of the kids, schoolmates of my father, was so desperate that he decided to break into the depot,
Mm.
and he got caught. He got caught red-handed, and it turned out they all learned that stealing from the SS carried the death penalty by firing squad.
Oh, geez.
So this kid's 15,
Mhm.
and the next morning, they did send the little ones away on some excursion,
Mhm.
but the older ones were made to watch when that boy was executed by a firing squad in front of
Wow.
them.
Oh, man.
They marched him out, and they said, "The vermin must be exterminated. We demand absolute obedience, and this is what will happen to you if you don't."
Oh,
Yeah,
holy cow.
yeah.
Ruthless.
So he never forgot that.
Yeah.
That's one of the things he always had a very hard time talking about,
Mhm.
and he reluctantly told it in the tapes.
Yeah.
And my mother tells me that he told her once,
Yeah.
and so that's something that haunted him for a long time.
Wow.
Yeah,
Mm.
and
That's
then
tough.
yeah,
I couldn't even imagine, being that age and with your classmates, basically, and then watching one of your classmates, go up in front of a firing squad. I mean,
yeah,
I can't even imagine that.
yeah. Yeah, that's those were really dire conditions.
Right.
And then less than a month later, they finally did come. So the army vehicle showed up. They were out. So interestingly, I forgot to say that. So the SS, for some reason, actually gave them a choice and asked them whether they wanted to join the SS, where they would be very well fed. And this was of course mentioned to them several times, or they could join the regular military forces. And even those kids knew that my father said no, they were creepy, and we want to get away from them as far as we could. So we signed up for the regular army. So the army truck showed up, and it was, I believe, March 18th, 1945, and took him to the front. And so my father didn't even know where he was. He had no idea what unit he was in. He was issued a uniform. He was made part of the regular army. This was not, there is one program also called the Volkssturm, which, in those days, basically, all Germans, older men and young children women were encouraged to be part of the Volkssturm, which was sort of the civilian forces that would, resist to the end. That's not what my father was actually recruited into the army at 14. Right. And so he was sent to, again, what was the Russian front, but it was in Austria. And so he took part in the famous precursor battle of the Battle of Vienna, the Battle of Wiener Neustadt, which happened, he's not sure, but it was a couple of days. So probably the 31st of March to the 2nd of April.
Right.
And so, he was almost mortally wounded in hand-to-hand combat with a Russian kid who he said was probably his age.
No kidding. Wow.
Having fired his four Panzerfausts, because they only gave them 4. And after that, well, they only fired once. So, and they were in foxholes, and they had to let the tanks approach at exactly 20 meters.
Oh my gosh.
And the book is called Save the Last Bullet, because the SS told them, keep the last bullet for yourself. Don't let yourself be taken prisoner by the Russians, because that is a fate worse than death.
Wow.
And so, my father almost miraculously survived, and was stitched back up and put right back on the front.
Now, and you said it was hand-to-hand combat, how he was injured.
He was, yes. So he had 1 bullet left. And he jumped out of the foxhole, and he turned, and there was this Russian kid with a bayonet right in his face. And so he wanted to gut my father.
Yeah.
And my father pushed him with a machine gun. And so it deflected the bayonet to the leg, but it sliced almost his whole leg open.
Oh, man.
And, and so he was bleeding out.
Yeah.
And so, luckily 2 comrades saw him and put a tourniquet on him. Managed to drag him back. Yeah.
And then you said they basically patched him up and said, go back.
Yeah, good as new. Go back. And and so, but I guess luckily for him, this was, we're talking April 45, right? And so the war was almost over. So they started retreating because they'd been decimated. And so his command had gotten word that this was inevitable, and that Germany was going to be split up, right, into a Russian side and allied and other allied forces, the American side, and they got wind of where that was going to happen.
Okay.
And so they sped whatever was left of his unit, which wasn't very many, I think a couple dozen people, and went back and tried to make their way through Austria to this town where the demarcation line was supposed to be. and they needed to cross a river. The river ends, and north of the river was going to be the American side, and south of the river is going to be the Russian side.
Right.
And so they hightailed it there, and they crossed that river the night of the 7th to the 8th of May, which, if you know World War II, you know exactly what that is.
Yeah.
They didn't. So the next day they wake up, and my father literally in town, he's walking around and he runs, and he's still in full, he's had his helmet on and everything.
Right.
Runs into an American Jeep. And everybody froze, and they didn't fire, and he didn't fire. I mean, he knew one, and he was outnumbered.
Yeah.
But he, you know, everybody was like frozen, and all of a sudden the Americans take off. And he starts running back to his lieutenant. He goes, the Americans, and then he goes, Langbein, the war's over. We just heard.
Wow.
That's how they found out. And so that was the 8th of May.
Holy moly. That is crazy.
Yep.
I mean, he's a blessed man, you know? I mean,
yeah,
to be able to make it through that, and then, you know, somebody was watching out for him. I'll say that.
And he was 14. He was still 14. He turned 15 in American captivity.
Really? Wow.
Yes,
now, how long was he in captivity with the Americans?
So that's interesting because, so they, of course, decided to give themselves up to the Americans.
Right.
That was a smart move. On the 9th, so they had some radio contact and were told to get to a certain meeting point on the outskirts of Munich.
Mm-hmm.
And they had in Munich in particular, I don't know if there were other parts of Germany, may have had them too. They had camps. So basically POW or internment camps that were outdoor camps. So it essentially was just, you know, some barbed wire, and it was all outside because there were no facilities. So they waited to get picked up. They waited in, you know, at a certain point that they'd been told to wait at. It was a meadow. The Americans then eventually came and picked them up and took them there. And he spent about a month and a half there in the internment camp. Yeah. And he was an interned person, not a POW, because he had been taken prisoner after the war ended.
Oh, okay.
So they didn't quite know what to do with them, and especially with kids that young.
Yeah.
And so they were a bit flummoxed. And, you know, so that, and a lot of stuff happens. Of course, I'm not, you know, going to tell the whole book, but a lot of stuff happens. And so, but eventually he does get released. And so that happens June 16th. And he notices that as they all get called, you know, to stand at attention. And he sees that there are basically there's a line, and there's some officials there, and then this line gets split into two. So some men are going to the right, some men are going to the left. And so he's listening, and he's getting closer, and he can hear that, you know, what they're saying and what they're asking. And so they're asking what their profession is or their activity. And he noticed that those who said they were farmers were going to the left, and those who said anything else were going to the right. And he promptly concluded, farmers, they need to go home because there's
smart.
So, and he comes from a farming family. So when he was asked, he said, farmer and student. And sure enough, he was sent to the left, and they did send him home.
Wow.
But it wasn't over, right? They sent him home to serve 1 year of forced farm labor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But the other side, so the ones that went to the right, were sent to the minefields in France.
No kidding.
They were sweeping mines and weren't released till 1948.
No kidding. Wow.
Those who survived. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he went home. When you say he went home, he went back to where his parents lived?
To his town.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. He had not had, since the end of 1943, he hadn't had any contact with his parents. They did not know whether he was dead or alive.
Wow.
He didn't know if they were dead or alive. So he didn't know what he was going to find when he got home. And what he found is that his town had been 90% destroyed. There was nothing standing but for the train station, which was heavily bombed, and the church. And that's how he got his bearings to even find the pile of rubble where the home used to be.
Yeah. And now both of his parents survived?
His parents did survive because of that farming connection.
Yeah.
So his mother was sent by his father to the countryside. And that was relatively safe.
Yeah.
And he stayed. He went back and forth, and he was there. And that's a whole other long story.
Mm-hmm.
So my grandfather, whom I still remember, was a World War I veteran.
Right.
And he believed his son was dead. He thought, and he only had one child. He was the only son, the only child. And so he believed that his son was dead. So when he saw his son, first he didn't recognize him immediately, and because my father was 6 feet tall, he was down to 90 pounds. He was completely emaciated.
Holy moly! That's life.
A walking skeleton, basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And but then when my grandfather recognized him, his fear, all that bottled up fear, the best that my father can figure it out still until the day he died, he couldn't completely put his finger in, but he said, I think my father turned all his fear into anger. It all turned into anger. So he got mad at him, and he didn't speak to him for months.
Really?
He turned away and wanted nothing to do with him.
Holy cow, man, that's tough.
Yeah. And he was immediately told that did not happen. What happened to him did not happen. And he was never to speak of it again.
Wow.
Yeah. So he carried that PTSD.
So he literally didn't talk about it after that. Like that was the moment that.
Yeah, not a word. He broached other subjects. So the one thing, of course, with the Jewish condition, right, was that he had a little friend. When he was growing up, his mother was often sick, and they had neighbors who became close friends. And the husband was Jewish, and the mother was what you'd consider in those days Aryan. So she was German, Christian, German. And that was prohibited, of course. So there were laws enacted back in 1935, as far as back as 1934, that it was prohibited to have a mixed marriage. And they owned a shoe store in town, and the wife was very good friends with my grandmother, and she had a young child who was younger. He was like 6 years younger than my father, but because my grandmother was often sick, he would go and she would babysit him, and so he'd play with the kid, and so it was like his little brother, almost his little buddy. And he noticed as time went on, even though he was quite a bit older, so it's not like he went to play with him a lot anymore, but he kept in close touch. And the mothers were friends. He just noticed that wasn't happening anymore, and he couldn't figure out why he couldn't go see his friend, and why they didn't go to the shoe store anymore. And he, of course, never got any answers to any of that. So fast forward to after the war, he was actually shown pictures by the American soldiers. The American soldiers did that when they had German prisoners of war. They would show them the pictures of the Holocaust, of the concentration camps. Yeah. And my father did not believe it. He and his comrades were like, "No, this is propaganda. It can't be. It cannot be. Right. This cannot be. It's not possible, right? It's a lie." And so he didn't find, and because he went to 1 year's worth of farm labor, he missed the denazification, which the Allied forces did with the kids in school.
Right.
They explained to the kids what happened, and that was the denazification. He missed that. So he then starts school, they got to reincorporate these kids into school now. They're supposed to finish high school, right? And so they're behind. They're a couple of years behind. And that's when he starts piecing things together. And he became extremely depressed and angry because he felt violated. He felt like he had been made complicit in something he had absolutely no control over or no knowledge of.
Right.
And then he saw these teachers and he said, well, these teachers were extolling Hitler. Oh,
sorry.
So cute.
He wants to play.
So they were extolling Hitler yesterday, and now they're extolling the virtues of democracy today. So who am I to believe?
Yeah.
Right.
That makes sense.
And so he went through a tough period, and then he eventually got his footing back, actually with the help of a British soldier.
Okay.
So that he was in the British controlled area. North Rhine-Westphalia was the British controlled area. And in the beginning, Americans, British were drastically limiting any kind of fraternization, right? You were not supposed to fraternize with the enemy. And the Germans were supposed to be kept basically as a rural state, right? They were not to be made any efforts to reestablish industry and rebuild the country, right? And that, of course, changed over time. And it changed because, I think it was President Eisenhower who initially had that position and then changed it because he realized that Germany had to become rebuilt in order to help the rest of Europe.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And so this British soldier was, he was, I think, lieutenant, I believe, and he was relatively young. And so they had some fraternization efforts especially with youth. And so they started soccer leagues.
Oh, okay.
And so my dad was very fond of soccer, and that's how they sort of became friends. And he convinced my father that, he had a future and he had a place. And my father spoke English. He was really good at languages. He had a very good ear. And he spoke it well already, which is how he'd communicated, in the internment camp and so forth with the Americans. And the lieutenant talked to him about Europe, about a unified Europe, and about rebuilding Europe, and that he could participate. And lo and behold, that's what my dad ended up doing. So, eventually he became a lawyer. And he became a federal worker. He was part of the German Department of Defense.
Oh wow! Okay.
And then got the Medal of European Merit in 1979 for the furthering of democracy in Europe.
Wow.
And he was very proud of that. And then he was the head of legal in NATO Germany.
Wow.
And I don't know if some of your listeners might know the Tornado airplane. That's the NATO airplane. The NATO fighter jet, Tornado fighter jet, was put in service. I can't remember exactly when, maybe 40 years ago. And it's now being decommissioned. It's still active in certain areas. And my father wrote that contract.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah, he wrote the Tornado contract. We have a small Tornado airplane, like a little,
like a
model plane with a plaque for him.
Wow. That's really cool, man. Wow. And so as you were growing up, right, he never really talked about any of it. You didn't hear any of the stories, anything that happened with him or anything.
No, he would not. He didn't speak of it at all. He would wake up at night. I would hear him screaming.
Yeah, night terrors and stuff.
Constant night terrors.
Yeah.
And my mother would always say, "Oh no, it's fine. Don't worry about it."
Mm-hmm.
So they were, very hush hush about it.
Yeah.
And he couldn't get himself to talk about it
Yeah.
until much later. So when I became an adult, he did, he made a few allusions. He made, a few comments here and there. And that's when I started realizing, his age during the war. And I started asking questions, and I started becoming really, really interested. But he still was just dad, right? I mean, I didn't know, the medals he got and all that. I didn't know. To me, it was just dad.
Right.
So it was much later, that I put two and two together. And I guess also, as a child of a military veteran, didn't quite realize why my father was emotionally unavailable most of the time.
Mm.
Right. And why he was pretty tough.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He was authoritarian. He had a wall. And all of those things, you just don't know why until, later they started making sense to me.
Oh, yeah. And that's unfortunately, this happens a lot, but a lot of kids will resent that. And then all of a sudden they have, bad relationship as time goes on.
Oh, yeah.
But, it's good that you recognize, like, hey, there's more to this. It's not just, it's said and done or whatever. There's something behind it, and you were able to move past that. So
yeah, I didn't then. So yes, and it wasn't always a cakewalk, right? It was.
Yeah.
It did cause issues. It certainly did. But later on, yes, I realized, oh, well, this is why, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then I convinced him that his story was important just for posterity, important for, the fabric of history.
Right.
Because these stories will get lost, and there should be stories from all sides and from all walks of life in order to really understand
Absolutely.
history as it unfolded, and the impact of history, and why things are the way they are today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's not, at least here in America, we always look at history from our perspective. And we don't always look at it from somebody else's perspective of what happened for them when they were over there. And the story you're telling, and it's absolutely incredible. I encourage everybody, go buy the book, and when the new one comes out, go buy that one too, because I mean it's fantastic. I love that you took the time to convince your father to do this, and it's an incredible story.
Yeah, and I actually wanted to take a minute to finish that story about the Jewish family, because it's quite interesting. By what happened to them is that the lady didn't want to divorce her husband. She refused, and that was a very bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so she put herself in great danger, and her son, by doing that, but she refused. And so the man was taken, and he was taken to the Theresienstadt concentration camp.
Okay.
Which is in what today is the Czech Republic, Terezin.
Okay.
And it's a museum, so you can still go see it, actually. It still exists.
Mm-hmm.
And she was relegated basically to something amounting to house arrest. And so what she was not put in jail, however. She was not taken away, but she was basically ostracized. She was not allowed to, nobody was allowed to render aid in any shape or form. And she was not to get food stamps. So basically, they were just basically starving her.
Right. Yeah.
And so my grandmother kept passing food to her, basically whenever she could.
Right.
That's how she survived. But at the end, things got so bad. They did, like in 45. They whoever had not yet been taken fit that that profile was going to be taken. And so my grandparents hid her and her son in the coal cellar.
Oh, kidding! Wow.
To avoid her from being taken and killed.
Yeah. Wow.
So she, she survived.
Uh-huh.
And that's the story that then my grandmother told my father. And that's how my father knew it was all true. That's when because he asked her, he
Yeah.
said, what happened? And so he's just gotten, so he's 16.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the coin dropped. And he goes, oh my God, it's all
Yeah.
real. These are not just stories. This is all true.
Wow.
And the man survived. He
Okay.
walked back from Terezin, walked back. So that took
Wow.
probably over a month.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, and I guess it's a big love story because they loved each other so much that he decided to stay. And almost no Jews stayed in Germany after
Yeah.
World War II. And he stayed. And he stayed and he reopened his shoe shop. And that shoe shop is still there today. And in 2022, I had the great privilege to go visit the shoe store. And I was looking for him, hoping that he was still alive.
Yeah.
And he was, but he was very sick. And
Uh-huh.
so I met his daughter. I didn't know he had a daughter. And she was almost my age. She was just a few years younger because he was a few years
Yeah.
younger than my father. And we met and we exchanged emails and she corroborated the whole story. She says, yes, that's exactly what my family told me.
Wow. Now, is that in a book too?
That is part of it is in the book. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, that's a whole story in itself.
And that's a whole story. So I'm saying part of it is in the book. So the story leading up to, that what happened and then my father understanding, that's all in the book. But yes, that's a whole separate story, right? Yeah.
Wow. Man. That's why I love doing this podcast, because I get to hear some amazing stories. So thanks for coming on and sharing this. This is incredible.
It is my pleasure. It's my pleasure, and I always am grateful to have the opportunity to be able to share the story with whoever would like to listen to it, because I think its history is so important, and the stories of so many people. They're all individual stories, right? They're all individual stories, experiences that when you hear them, that's what brings history close to a person. Right. It's not reading it in a history book, right? That's just a bunch of dates and right. And then this happened and that happened. But to bring it really close and to have people understand, that's you tell people's personal stories and what happened to them. And those are interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And hopefully we learn something, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, very important. They say if you don't tell the stories and stuff, you're doomed to repeat it, right? Repeat history, and there are certain things you don't want to repeat. So you need to be able to tell the stories and let people know what happened. So
absolutely, yeah, and especially, and also the plight of children in war, right?
Right. Oh yeah.
Child soldiers. I mean, that's happening today. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've heard countless stories about individuals in Iraq or whatever, where, they're basically using the kids as shields type of thing, throwing them out, and, it's just not right. And unfortunately, you think about the soldiers and stuff that are having to, engage with somebody that young, think of the mental aspect of that, it's tough, it's tough on both sides.
Yeah. And you have in Iraq, in Africa, you have child soldiers, you have in the Ukraine and Russia right now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's, we were seeing, there was some documentary that was showing that they were teaching the Russian kids to dismantle weapons and put them back together in school.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
Right? Okay. I mean, and these were 12, 13-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
So wow. That's why they're doing that, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Good grief.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you for what you've done. Now, for everybody that's out there, like Save the Last Bullet, right? Where can they find the book? What's the best way to get that?
Yeah, it's so Save the Last Bullet, Memoir of a Boy Soldier in Hitler's Army, and you can find it wherever books are sold. It is available as audiobook as well as in hardcover, and you can buy it on Amazon. You can go on my website, or you can just go directly to Amazon. You can go to local bookstores and order it if they don't have it on hand. Barnes and Noble, anywhere where books are sold, you can.
Okay, and then the website. What is the website?
Oh, it's Heidi Langbein-Author.com.
Okay. Heidi I'm not even going to be able. I will put that in the description for everybody, because I'm going to be able to type that out right now. So,
and you might be interested. There is a very important World War II podcast called Fighting Through World War II.
Okay.
And my good friend Paul Cheal is the podcaster, and there is an episode of my book in his podcast, episode
Very cool.
69. And he's also, if anybody's interested in a sneak preview of one of the stories in the anthology, it's a story of a young British girl who was a child and was in a Nazi concentration camp. Yeah, and it wasn't just Jewish people. And so that sneak preview is in his podcast, is the latest episode that just came out. It has it. So.
Oh, man. I am definitely going to have to check that out.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, shoot, Heidi, thanks for coming on and doing this. Thanks for everything that you've done with the books and, taking history, taking it to the next level for us, letting us know what happened. It's very important for us to know this thing. So thank you for doing it.
Thank you again. Thank you for having me. I hope that this has been of interest to your listeners, and that again, we can preserve history a little bit at a time, and have efforts like yours, which are so important. Keep watching these, for people to keep watching the podcasts and listening to the stories, so we don't forget.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Heidi, if there's anything else that you want to share or talk about or say, I'll give you an opportunity here. If not, then we can wrap it up.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Heidi. Don't leave me whenever we do this outro, but to everybody out there, if you're struggling, you need help, anything like that, don't forget the VA does have some great resources. You can always dial 988 press option 1. You can always text 838-255 or go to veteranscrisisline.net and click on the chat icon. Any of those options will put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. But remember, one veteran life lost is one too many. And if you're out there, you're not struggling, reach out to the buddies you serve with, ask them how they're doing. And if they need that helping hand, please give it to them. All right, Heidi, one last time, thank you for coming on and doing this. Much appreciated. To everybody out there, stay motivated, change your socks.
No more 22. On to the journey and finish the fight.